One of the other problems Keir Starmer's got this week is that, you remember, he was going to revamp the NHS. He was going to get rid of NHS England. He was going to lay off a load of people and create more money for those who are at the sharp end of the clinicians sort of side of things, and get rid of a load of the managers. It turns out, though, that they never budgeted for it. And the £1 billion that it was going to cost to make people redundant, they don't have. So now they're not going to be able to do it. So I'm afraid it's just another damp squib. Maria, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
It's hard to consider how ridiculous this story is, right? Because if you are going to embark on a reform of the NHS, which I think everybody thought was a good idea, and NHS England clearly needed a bit of a clear out, also a good idea, surely to heavens at some point or other in the management of the thing, you would say, well, how are we going to pay for this? We have to make people redundant, we have to pay them off, it's going to be £1 billion. Surely you must have thought you'd need to have the money before you even suggested it.
Yeah, but it's basic stuff, really. And on top of the £350 million, the 22% pay increase for resident doctors' costs, this government's actually costing the NHS money rather than providing money for frontline services. But there is no need for it to cost this much. You know, basic things like most of those managers are on high wages, so their redundancy bill will be higher than, say, if you made doctors or nurses redundant. So that should be pretty obvious from the start. But actually, a lot of those managers will move over into the Department of Health or into other NHS organisations. You know, that's what's happened in the past. They all kind of rotate through the system. But you could actually cheapy some of those people over and significantly save on your redundancy costs. So I can't believe that they're just making everyone redundant and not thinking about just transferring staff over to the Department of Health, particularly those who've got the highest costs, and then have a recruitment freeze. And as people leave naturally, you're not having to pay redundancy or as people retire. So there's ways and means of managing kind of reducing your staff numbers. And just to make everyone redundant on a blanket basis, you know, is a mad way, and just shows that they just, you know, can't just do basic finance management.
No. And that's the bit that seems to be the most surprising, because presumably there are people inside the NHS who run it, who they could ask questions of, who they could ask, you know, about how to streamline it, how to do it best. I mean, you've been working in the business for a long time, and last time you and I spoke, you said that you'd found there was a lot more people now working sort of management jobs than there were the last time you worked there. And, you know, so somebody like you clearly knows more about this than the government does.
Yeah, but also I think, you know, you touched on it in your introduction on this, is there's fundamental reform that needs to happen to the structure of the NHS.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about a national health service. It's not a national health service. There's, you know, independent groups that provide services for the NHS. GPs, for example, are private businesses that provide a service for the NHS, as are pharmacists, as are dentists. And so if a minister or a government wants to make changes to those, they have no power to. They can give them more money, but then it's up to them if they do or do not provide those services. Right. And that's the fundamental kind of fly in the ointment. You can't make radical changes if you don't have the power to be able to make sure it happens. Right. A good example of this is we spend £3 billion a year on dentistry in this country, and yet no one can get to see a dentist. And that's because that money is not ring-fenced. I used to lobby number 10 for this all the time. And what happens is that money goes into our local systems called ICBs. There's 42 around England. But if they choose not to spend that money on dentistry, then it will go on something else. And then there's not anything a government minister or a government can do about it. That's fundamentally wrong, because it's the government that's accountable to the taxpayer. And so we should be having those levers to be able to influence where money is and isn't spent. So you've got, one, the incompetence of just making everyone redundant and wasting money, quite frankly. But then two, not having the levers of power to be able to direct money where you want it to go for taxpayers. And until that happens, you're not really going to get fundamental change in the NHS. No.
So really, since they've been in charge, nothing's actually changed at all, by the sounds of it.
No, I mean, you know, they make some, you know, good announcements. I mean, I don't disagree around NHS England. They also don't have the power to enforce change in NHS trusts or GPs or ICBs. So I don't disagree with what they're doing with NHS England, but it's just basic management stuff to just make everyone redundant on high salaries. You know, that's pretty obvious that's going to cost you a lot of money, and it's quite frankly surprising it's nearly taken them a year to work that out.
Yeah, it is surprising, but nothing surprises me about this lot, I have to say. Maria Caulfield, thank you very much indeed. Nurse and former Conservative MP, basically saying, look, you can't just willy-nilly fire loads of people without any kind of plan as to how you're going to pay for it. Of course you're going to need the money. They needed £1 billion, they didn't have it. they made the announcement they were going to make all these people redundant. They can't do it now.